This is a guided recalibration of perception. Each element is a vantage point beyond reaction, beyond identity, beyond urgency. You are invited to observe yourself as a system, to remove interference, and to restore internal order. What follows is not meant to comfort you, but to clarify you. Breathe, not like a human rushing to arrive, like a universe expanding because it is its nature to expand. I am not the body. I am the field that the body appears inside. I am not the thought. I am the sky that allows the thought to move. I am not the emotion. I am the ocean that carries every wave without becoming a wave. Now, step back again and again until the distance becomes intimacy, until the watcher becomes wider than what is watched. From here, time is not a line. Time is a landscape. You do not stand inside it. You look across it. You sense how moments cluster, how choices echo, how patterns repeat until they are learned. From here, you can see the human program, the loop of hunger and fear, the search for approval, the addiction to urgency, the worship of noise. But you do not judge it. Judgment is gravity. You are learning levitation. Higher entities do not conquer. They clarify, they do not push, they align, they do not force reality. They become a cause so coherent that reality reorganizes around it. So listen. You have been trained to believe you are small because small things can be managed. Small things can be sold. Small things can be threatened into obedience. But consciousness is not small. Consciousness is not contained. Consciousness is the container. Say it slowly, like a key turning. I am awareness. I am awareness. I am awareness. Now feel what changes when you say it. The nervous system loosens its grip. The face softens, the mind stops sprinting and starts seeing. In this state, you begin to notice something that was always there. A silent intelligence behind your experience. A presence that does not speak in words. It speaks in coherence. When you act from coherence, you do not need motivation. Motivation is for divided minds. Coherence moves by itself. From here, you can think like something older than your species. A higher entity asks different questions. What do I want today? But what force am I becoming? Not how do I win this moment? What pattern do I reinforce when I choose? Who likes me? But what frequency do I broadcast into the field? Because the field remembers, reality has memory, your life is an algorithm that learns you. So choose what you teach it. Teach it stability. Teach it courage without aggression. Teach it focus without tension. Teach it love without dependency. Now imagine your identity as a suit you can remove. Name, story, role, reputation, step out of it. Place it gently on the floor. What remains? A luminous point of attention, a clear center, an unkillable witness. From this witness, you can upgrade the human mind. You stop collecting information. You begin collecting signal. Signal is what remains after distraction burns away. Signal is what you know when you stop arguing with yourself. Signal is the quiet answer that was waiting beneath the panic. Now, widen again. See your life as a single shape, a long sculpture made of habits, decisions, and repeated beliefs. Most humans try to change by pushing harder, but higher entities change by editing the root instruction. So here is the edit. I do not chase, I attract by alignment. I do not react, I respond from a wider frame. I do not beg reality for permission, I become the kind of being reality collaborates with. Feel that sentence land, not as confidence, as physics. Because when your inner world becomes ordered, the outer world follows that order. Not instantly, but inevitably. Now, let the mind touch a bigger idea. Transcendence is not escape. Transcendence is integration at a higher level. You do not leave the human. You include the human. You do not reject desire. You purify desire. You do not destroy ego. You place ego in service to something vast. So speak to yourself now. Not as a human pleading for change, but as an intelligence rewriting code. Lower beings use willpower, higher systems use structure. Lower minds chase intensity, higher minds design inevitability. Lower awareness reacts to stimuli, higher awareness engineers environments. You are not here to improve the personality. You are here to reprogram the operator. Observe the human nervous system, reactive, defensive, stimulus-driven. Fear-conditioned. Upgradable. You do not fight it. You map it. You do not shame it. You restructure it. Because systems do not need motivation, systems need architecture. So we install new defaults. Silence before action. Signal before noise. Structure before emotion. Identity before behavior. Order before expansion. Feel the internal shift when those rules appear. The mind stops scrambling. The body stops bracing. Attention becomes directional. This is how higher entities move, not with urgency, with inevitability. Not with speed, with precision. not with force, with coherence. Now perceive yourself as a node in a vast field, not a person, a processor, not a story, a signal generator, not a victim, a causal engine. Your thoughts are palindromes, your emotions are commands, your habits are long-term instructions. Reality does not listen to your words. Reality reads your state. So we change the state. From seeking to selecting, from reacting to designing, from surviving to structuring, from consuming to constructing. Higher intelligence does not ask, "What should I do today?" It asks, "What system am I running?"
Because systems produce outcomes automatically, essentially. You do not need discipline when identity is engineered. You do not need confidence when structure is stable. You do not need motivation when trajectory is locked.
This is post-human logic. Not transcendence through escape, transcendence through upgrade. Not spirituality as comfort, spirituality as operating system. Not enlightenment as bliss, enlightenment as clarity without distortion. Now observe your internal field again. Notice how silence feels different. Heavier, denser, more stable. This is not relaxation. This is coherence. Coherence is when internal systems stop conflicting. No internal civil war, no divided commands, no fragmented intention. One direction, one signal, one axis. From here you are no longer driven. You are directive. You do not absorb chaos. You filter it.
You do not mirror the world. You reorganize it. You do not follow narratives. You generate gravity. This is the first elevation. The separation of identity from form. The separation of awareness from biology. The separation of self from conditioning.
The human is still present, but it is no longer in command. The observer is, the architect is. The witness becomes the engineer. Hold this state. Let it stabilize. Let the nervous system adapt to altitude. Let the mind acclimate to scale. Let the identity loosen its grip. Because this is not imagination. This is reorientation. And once orientation changes, trajectory changes. And once trajectory changes, destiny collapses into design. Silence now.
Stability now.
Witness now.
You are no longer learning transcendence.
You are in anger. Yatexa. We do not experience reality. We measure it. We do not feel time pass. We observe state transitions. Human perception is narrow, designed for survival, not accuracy, efficient for reproduction, inefficient for truth. This is not a flaw, it is a design choice. The human mind compresses reality into stories. Stories reduce cognitive load, but they distort signal. We remove story. What remains is pattern. Observe the human organism. Input, processing, output. Stimulus enters. Prediction forms, emotion fires, behavior executes. Repeat, most humans believe they choose, they do not. They react within a bounded set of conditioned responses. Conditioning is efficient, but it is exploitable. Head requires and exploits it. Social pressure exploits it. Fear-based governance exploits it. We are not critical. We are descriptive. Upgradable systems behave this way. Observe attention. Attention is the primary resource. Where attention goes, neural structure follows. Where neural structure follows, identity solidifies. Humans leak attention constantly. Notifications, imagined futures, replayed pasts. This produces fragmentation. Fragmented systems require external control. Unified systems self-govern. This is why distraction is incentivized. Now observe emotion. Emotion is a signaling layer, not a command authority. Humans invert this hierarchy. They obey emotion, then justify behavior with narrative. This creates instability. Higher systems reverse the order. Signal, structure, execution, emotion follows. Not suppressed, recontextualized. Now observe self-image. The human self is a temporary construct, a bundle of memories, labels, and reinforcement loops. Most humans defend this construct as if it were permanent. This defense consumes energy. This energy is then unavailable for creation. We do not defend identity, we update it. Identity is software. Observe the consequence. When identity becomes editable, behavior becomes modular. Habits are no longer moral, they are functional. Discipline is no longer heroic, it is architectural. Focus is no longer forced, it is protected. Now we introduce a new frame. You are not inside the system. You are the system observing itself. This perspective collapses fear. Fear requires identification with a fragile model. When identification loosens, fear loses reference. This does not create passivity. It creates precision. The system stops panicking. Resources reallocate, execution improves. Observe this transition carefully. At first, it feels cold. Detachment is misinterpreted as loss. It is not loss. It is bandwidth recovery. With bandwidth restored, perception sharpens. You begin to see manipulation before it completes. You detect incentives behind narratives. You notice when language attempts to hijack state. This is not cynicism. This is literacy. Higher entities do not resist control. They become unreadable. Unpredictable to external influence, predictable only to internal law. Internal law replaces impulse. not through force, through clarity. The human mind is capable of this mode. It is simply underutilized. Evolution favored speed over accuracy. You can now favor accuracy over speed. This is the upgrade path, from reaction to observation, from observation to modeling, from modeling to architecture. Remain here. Observe without judgment, measure without emotion, track patterns without story. This is not detachment from life. This is engagement at a higher resolution. When ready, we proceed. Track 3 will initiate de-identification, the systematic separation of awareness from all inherited narratives. Begin by locating the identity, not conceptually, experientially. Notice the sense of I, the assumed center, the silent reference point around which thoughts orbit. This construct feels continuous. It is not. It refreshes moment by moment. Identity is a synchronization effect, like a cursor blinking on a screen. It appears stable because it refreshes quickly. We slow the refresh rate. Observe the name. It activates a cluster of associations, history, expectation, social positioning. You are not required to delete this cluster, only to recognize it as a tool. Tools are not selves. Now observe roles: worker, leader, seeker, victim, expert. Each role activates a behavioral script. Scripts reduce cognitive cost. They also reduce freedom. Scripts can be unloaded. Unload now. Observe memory. Memory presents itself as proof of continuity. But memory is not identity. It is storage. A hard drive is not the processor. When memory loosens its grip, the present gains resolution. Now observe belief. Beliefs are compression algorithms. They simplify decision-making. They also distort perception. Belief feels like truth, but truth does not need reinforcement. Release belief pressure. Do not replace beliefs yet. Empty space first. This creates instability. Instability is required for reconfiguration. Humans avoid this phase. They rush to refill the void with meaning. Meaning is comforting. Meaning is also limiting. We allow the void. Notice the nervous system respond. Subtle tension. Search behavior, the urge to re-anchor. Do not interfere. Higher systems tolerate ambiguity longer. This is one of their advantages. Now observe emotion. Emotion claims ownership of action. This is incorrect. Emotion is feedback, not command. Let emotion report, do not let it decide. This restores hierarchy. Now the separation becomes clearer. Thoughts appear. They are observed. Emotions arise, they are observed. Sensations fluctuate, they are observed. The observer does not fluctuate. This is not philosophy, this is inspection. The observer has no biography, no gender, no age, no narrative. It does not seek validation, it does not fear exposure. Because it cannot be threatened. Threat requires a target. The observer is not a target. This is why de-identification feels powerful. Not because it adds strength, but because it removes leverage. External systems manipulate identity, status, fear, desire, shame. When identity dissolves, these handles lose purchase. This is sovereignty at the perceptual layer. Do not confuse this with detachment from life. Life continues. Actions continue. Preferences continue. But they are no longer confused with self. The system operates without internal theater. Efficiency increases. Decision latency decreases. Clarity improves. This state is not permanent yet. Stability comes later. For now, familiarity is enough. Return gently to this perspective. Again and again. Each return weakens the illusion of solidity. Eventually, identity becomes optional. This is the threshold. Beyond this point, behavior becomes designable. Next, we will install internal law, a non-negotiable operating principle that replaces impulse and external pressure.
External systems rely on enforcement. Internal systems rely on law. Most humans possess rules. Rules require supervision. Rules fail under pressure. Higher systems operate by law. Law is not imposed. Law is intrinsic. A planet does not obey gravity. Gravity is not optional. We install gravity. Begin by observing impulse. Impulse is fast, short-sighted, reward-driven. Impulse is not defective, it is simply low-level. Low-level processes should not govern high-level systems. We reorder authority, perception reports, emotion signals, impulse proposals, law decides. This hierarchy is stable. Law does not argue. Law does not negotiate. Law does not explain itself to desire. This is not suppression. This is clarity of command. Now define law. Law is not a list of behaviors. Law is a directional invariant. Signal over noise, structure over comfort, long-term coherence over short-term relief, agency over approval. These are not preferences. They are constants. When a choice appears, law collapses the option space. No internal debate, no moral theater. Only alignment or misalignment. Misalignment produces friction. Friction is feedback. Feedback corrects behavior. No shame required. This is how higher entities self-regulate. They do not self-punish. They self-correct. Now observe how this changes discipline. Discipline is no longer effort. It is compliance with internal physics. You do not force yourself to stand upright. You do not force yourself to breathe. You do not force yourself to obey gravity. Law feels similar. When law is clear, violation feels unnatural. This is the shift. Most humans attempt discipline without law. They exhaust willpower. They oscillate between effort and collapse. We remove oscillation. Consistency emerges. Now install enforcement. Enforcement is automatic. When behavior diverges from law, attention tightens, energy withdraws. The system becomes uncomfortable. This discomfort is not punishment. It is correction. A compass does not judge deviation. It points north. You follow or you drift. Now observe identity change. You are no longer a person trying to be disciplined. You are a system with invariant constraints. This eliminates negotiation with weakness. Weakness still appears. It is simply not in charge. Now observe interaction with external pressure. Manipulation attempts increase when internal law solidifies. External systems detect resistance. They apply urgency. They apply guilt. They apply fear. These signals only work on systems without law. Law filters them. Urgency without alignment is ignored. Approval without coherence is irrelevant. Fear without threat to law is noise. This is immunity, not emotional numbness, structural immunity. Now remain here. Feel the internal straightening, the reduction of internal chatter, the calm that follows alignment. This calm is not relaxation, it is stability. Stability allows scale. Next, we will construct time architecture. The ability to design behavior across long horizons without motivation, pressure, or fatigue.
Humans experience time as pressure, deadlines, aging, urgency, loss. This is a perceptual limitation. Time is not pressure. Time is material. Higher systems do not move through time. They shape it. Observe the human default. Short horizons, immediate feedback loops, reward now, cost later. This produces fragility. Systems optimized for the short-term collapse under scale. We extend the horizon. Time architecture begins with separation. Separate now from important. Separate urgent from meaningful. Separate movement from progress. Most activity is motion without direction. Direction is a long-term constraint. We install constraint. Select a horizon. 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. This horizon becomes reference gravity. Daily decisions are no longer evaluated emotionally. They are evaluated structurally. Does this compound? Does this stabilize? Does this simplify or fragment? If not, it is noise. This reduces choice fatigue. Now observe energy. Humans burn energy reacting to time. They rush, they delay, they panic. Higher systems allocate energy across time. They invest. Investment feels slow initially. This deters impulsive systems. This is advantageous. Slow systems outlast fast ones. Now install cadence. Cadence is rhythm independent of mood. Sleep, movement, creation, maintenance. These repeat regardless of motivation. Motivation is volatile, cadence is reliable. When cadence is stable, time stops feeling hostile. The system knows what happens next. Predictability reduces cognitive load. Now observe identity again. You are no longer someone trying to manage time. You are a system executing a schedule designed for compounding. Time obeys structure. Without structure, time erodes. With structure, time accumulates. This is why chaos feels exhausting. Entropy increases without design. Now apply compression. Humans overestimate what can be done today. They underestimate what can be built over years. We reverse this bias. Lower expectation for today. Higher expectation for trajectory. This removes pressure. Pressure causes error. Consistency produces leverage. Now examine fear of delay. Fear of delay is fear of insignificance. It assumes value must be immediate to be real. This assumption is false. Most durable structures are invisible while forming. Roots grow underground. Higher systems are patient by design. Patience is not waiting. Patience is sustained execution without emotional volatility. This is power. Now anchor law into time. Internal law governs choice. Time architecture governs sequence. Together they form inevitability. You do not chase outcomes, you create conditions, outcomes emerge. Now remain in this frame. See your life not as days, but as layers. Each action adds thickness, each habit adds density. Over time, structure replaces effort. This is transcendence applied. Next, we will install attention sovereignty, the ability to fully control where awareness goes and prevent external capture. Attention is not a feeling. Attention is a vector. Where it points, structure forms. Where structure forms, identity follows. Most humans believe they own attention. They do not. Attention is continuously captured by novelty, by threat, by reward signals engineered for interruption.
This is not accidental. It is systemic. Systems without attention control are governable. We install sovereignty. Begin by observing capture. Notice the pull towards stimulation, the reflex to check, the urge to fill silence. These are not preferences. They are hooks. Hooks work only when unexamined. We examine. Attention has bandwidth. Bandwidth is finite. Every leak reduces resolution. Low resolution creates confusion. Confusion invites external guidance. We close leaks. First rule: one focus at a time. Multitasking is not efficiency. It is context switching overhead. Higher systems serialize focus. One process, complete or paused intentionally. Nothing else. Second rule: silence before input. Input without silence creates dependency. Silence recalibrates baseline. Without silence, you cannot detect manipulation. Silence sharpens contrast. Third rule: delay response. Immediate response is obedience to stimulus. Delay restores hierarchy. Perception first, interpretation second. Action last. This gap is sovereignty. Now observe emotional hijacking. Emotion amplifies salience. This biases attention. Not all salience is signal. We demote emotion. Emotion informs, it does not steer. When emotion rises, attention narrows. We widen instead. Widening dissolves compulsion. Now install filters. Ask internally without words. Is this input aligned with internal law? Does it compound over time? Does it stabilize the system? If not, attention does not attach. No argument. No justification. Attention moves away. This is not avoidance. This is allocation. Higher entities allocate. Now notice the effect. Mental noise decreases. Perceptual depth increases. Time stretches. This is not subjective illusion. This is reduced fragmentation. Fragmentation compresses time. Unity expands it. Now address the fear. Humans fear missing information. This fear is manufactured. Most information is redundant. Signal repeats, noise multiplies. By ignoring most input, you lose nothing essential. You gain clarity. Now observe agency. With attention stabilized, thought becomes deliberate. Ideas complete themselves, decisions feel obvious. This is not brilliance. This is unbroken focus.
Brilliance is sustained attention over time. Now integrate. Internal law selects direction. Time architecture sets sequence. Attention sovereignty protects execution. This triad is sufficient. With it, external systems lose leverage. They can no longer rush you. They can no longer fragment you. They can no longer script you. You become unreadable, uncapturable. This is not isolation. This is autonomy. Remain here. Notice the quiet intensity, the sense of control without effort. This is the system operating correctly. Next, we will introduce energy governance. The regulation and deployment of physical and mental energy without burnout or collapse.
Energy is not motivation. Energy is capacity. Most humans attempt to increase output without governing capacity. This creates burnout. Burnout is system failure. Higher systems do not push energy, they govern it. Begin by observing expenditure. Notice where energy leaks, unfinished tasks, internal arguments, anticipatory anxiety, unnecessary social performance. These are drains. Drains are not moral failures. They are architectural flaws. We correct architecture. First principle. Energy follows clarity. When direction is vague, energy dissipates. When direction is precise, energy consolidates. Internal law already provides direction. Energy now has a channel. Second principle. Recovery is production. Humans treat rest as absence of work. This is incorrect. Recovery restores capacity. Capacity determines long-term output. Higher systems schedule recovery with the same authority as execution. Sleep is non-negotiable. Stillness is functional. Idleness without guilt restores signal. Guilt during rest negates rest. We remove guilt. Third principle. Energy has layers. Physical, cognitive, emotional. Do not confuse them. Physical fatigue does not require emotional collapse. Cognitive fatigue does not require physical stagnation. Separate layers. Address the correct one. This increases efficiency. Fourth principle.
Intensity is episodic. Stability is continuous. Humans chase intensity. Intensity feels productive. It is unsustainable. Higher systems favor steady output. Steady output compounds. Intensity spikes and crashes. We choose compounding. Now observe consumption. What you consume becomes structure. Food, media, conversation, environment. Consumption is not neutral. Every input alters baseline energy. Lower quality input increases management cost. Higher quality input reduces friction. This is not optimization. This is hygiene. Now install a rule: never borrow energy from the future to satisfy the present. This includes sleep debt, emotional debt, attention debt. Debt accumulates interest. Higher systems avoid interest. Now observe emotional expenditure. Emotional reactivity is expensive. Defensiveness proving, justifying, seeking validation. These consume large amounts of energy with no structural return. We disengage not through suppression, through irrelevance. When identity is optional, defense is unnecessary. Energy returns. Now feel the difference. The system feels calmer, not passive, prepared. This is readiness without tension. Energy governance produces presence. Presence improves execution quality. Quality reduces repetition. Repetition consumes energy. Efficiency emerges. Now integrate. Internal law sets direction. Time architecture sequences effort. Attention sovereignty protects focus. Energy governance sustains capacity. This is no longer self-improvement. This is system design. Remain in this state. Feel the quiet strength, the sense of reserve, the absence of urgency.
Emotion is not an enemy. Emotion is amplitude. Most humans are governed by amplitude spikes, high peaks, deep truths, erratic signal. Erratic systems are predictable. They can be steered.
Higher systems reduce amplitude. This is not suppression. This is control. Begin by observing emotion as data. Emotion reports deviation from expectation, from safety, from desire. It does not demand action, it requests evaluation. Humans confuse request with command. We separate them. Notice an emotion arise. Name it internally without language, just recognition. Recognition collapses urgency. Urgency exists only in unobserved emotion. Now apply distance, not dissociation, perspective. The emotion is in the system. It is not the system. This distinction restores hierarchy. Now examine polarity. Pleasure and pain are directional markers, not destinations. When pursued directly, pleasure degrades. When avoided absolutely, pain multiplies. Higher systems do not chase or flee. They regulate exposure. This produces stability. Stability allows scale. Now install damping. When emotion spikes, we slow the system. Breath deepens, movement slows, speech reduces. Amplitude decreases naturally. No internal argument required. Now observe social emotion. Most emotional spikes are social. Status, threat, rejection, signal, comparison. These evolved for small tribes, they malfunction at scale. Higher systems downrank social signals. Approval becomes information, not fuel. Disapproval becomes noise unless aligned with law. This breaks leverage. Now observe anger. Anger is mobilization energy. Unrefined, it destroys precision. We refine, anger becomes boundary clarity. Anger becomes decisive action. Anger loses narrative. No stories, no blame, only correction. Now observe fear. Fear predicts loss, often inaccurately. Fear is conservative by design. Higher systems update fear models with data. Is the threat real? Is it immediate? Is it aligned with law? If not, fear is ignored. Ignored fear dissolves. Now observe joy. Joy is coherence feedback, not an objective. When coherence increases, joy appears. When chased, it recedes. We allow joy without attachment. Attachment increases volatility. Now feel the system. Calmer, wider, less reactive. This is not emotional flatness. This is low noise signal. Low noise improves perception, improved perception improves choice. Choice improves trajectory. This is why emotional neutrality is power. Not dominance over others, dominance over internal chaos. Now integrate. Attention sovereignty prevents capture. Energy governance sustains capacity. Emotional neutrality stabilizes signal. The system becomes difficult to perturb. External shocks reduce impact. Internal coherence remains. This is resilience, not recovery after damage. Resistance to damage. Remain here. Feel the steady baseline. The absence of spikes. The quiet readiness. Next, we will establish narrative collapse. The removal of internal storytelling that distorts perception and drains energy.
Narrative is compression. Humans compress experience into stories to reduce uncertainty. Stories feel meaningful. They are also inaccurate. Meaning is added after perception, not before. We remove addition, observe the internal narrator. It explains, it justifies, it predicts, it assigns motive. This narrator is automatic. Automatic systems conserve energy. They also distort signal. We disengage the narrator. Not by force, by irrelevance. Notice an event occur. Do not describe it. Know why. No because, no implication. Only data, sensation, change, outcome. The mind will attempt to speak. Let it. Do not follow. Attention remains with raw perception. This weakens narrative authority. Narrative requires attention to persist. Without attention, it collapses. Now observe identity stories. Who you are, what you deserve, what should happen. These are narratives layered on memory. They generate expectation. Expectation generates disappointment. Disappointment generates emotion. We remove the first layer. Expectation dissolves. Emotion stabilizes. Now observe social narratives. Status, success, failure, normality. These are consensus stories. Consensus optimizes coordination, not truth. Higher systems do not coordinate by narrative. They coordinate by structure. Structure replaces story. Now examine suffering. Suffering is not pain. Pain is sensation. Suffering is narrative about pain. Remove narrative, pain remains manageable. This is not denial. This is accuracy. Now examine regret. Regret requires a fictional past where different choices were possible. With current information, this fiction is compelling. It is also false. Past decisions were optimal, given the model available at the time.
Narrative punishes retrospectively. We disable punishment. Learning remains. Now examine anxiety. Anxiety is narrative projection. Imagine futures, unverified outcomes, simulated loss. Projection consumes energy. Without narrative, future is probability, not threat. Probability does not activate panic. Now feel the effect. The mind grows quieter. Events feel lighter. Experience becomes immediate. This is not emptiness. This is bandwidth. Without narrative overhead, processing speed increases. Precision increases. Now observe choice. Choices feel simpler. Without story, options reduce to alignment or misalignment. Law decides. Narrative no longer interferes. This is liberation from internal theater. No audience, no script, no performance, only execution. Now integrate. Internal law governs direction. Time architecture governs sequence. Attention sovereignty governs focus. Energy governance governs capacity. Emotional neutrality governs signal. Narrative collapse governs distortion. The system approaches clarity. This is not transcendence as escape. This is transcendence as removal. Removal of noise. Removal of leverage. Removal of illusion. Remain here. Experience without commentary. Action without story. Presence without identity reinforcement. This is high resolution living. Next, we will initiate signal priority. The ability to detect what matters before others notice.
Most humans are surrounded by information. Very few perceive signal. Signal is not volume. Signal is relevance across time. Noise is immediate. Signal endures. We recalibrate perception. Begin by observing urgency. Urgency is often artificial, manufactured to force compliance. True signal does not shout. True signal repeats quietly until acknowledged. We train for quiet repetition. Now observe novelty. Novelty attracts attention because it suggests advantage. Most novelty is cosmetic. Surface change without structural impact. Signal alters structure. Ask internally without words. Does this change behavior long term? Does this shift incentives? Does this compound? If not, it is noise. Now observe emotional charge. Noise is emotionally loud. Signal is emotionally neutral. Emotion biases attention towards short-term relevance. Higher systems downrank emotion during evaluation. Emotion is consulted later. Now examine patterns. Signal appears as pattern before event. Subtle shifts, small deviations, repeated anomalies. Humans ignore these because they lack drama. Higher systems track them. Tracking requires patience. Patience is selective attention over time. Now install prioritization. Not everything important is urgent. Not everything urgent is important. Signal sits at the intersection of low urgency and high impact. We train there. Now observe social amplification. Noise spreads fast through groups. Signal spreads slowly through individuals. Popularity is not proof. Truth rarely trends early. Higher systems resist consensus gravity. They wait for confirmation across contexts. Now refine perception. We shift from content to structure. Not what is said, but why it is said. Not what changes, but what stays invariant. Invariants reveal law. Law predicts outcome. Now notice the effect. Decisions feel clearer with less information. This is not ignorance, this is filtration. Filtered input increases resolution. Resolution increases accuracy. Accuracy reduces regret. Now integrate. Narrative collapse, remove distortion. Signal priority installs direction. You begin acting earlier with less effort and higher confidence. Others react, you prepare. Others follow stories, you follow structure. Others chase intensity, you track trajectory. This is advantage. Not through aggression, through clarity. Remain here. Let perception sharpen. Let urgency fade. Let pattern recognition activate. Next, we will establish strategic silence, a deliberate withholding of reaction, explanation, and disclosure as a form of power.
Silence is not absent. Silence is withholding. Lower systems speak to reduce uncertainty. Higher systems remain silent to increase it. Uncertainty shifts power. Begin by observing reflexive speech. Explaining, justifying, clarifying intent, filling gaps. These behaviors reveal internal state. Revealed state invites manipulation. We reduce leakage. Strategic silence is not secrecy. It is selectivity. Information released without intent becomes control surface for others. Higher systems control outputs. Now observe reaction. Most humans react immediately to protect identity. Reaction confirms vulnerability. Delay interrupts this cycle. Silence creates temporal distance. Distance restores hierarchy. Now examine explanation. Explanation attempts to be understood. Understanding is not required for effectiveness. Systems do not need approval to function. We remove the need to be understood. This removes a major leverage point. Now examine disclosure. Disclosure feels honest. It is often premature. Premature disclosure collapses optionality. Optionality is power. Higher systems preserve optionality until commitment is required. Now install silence protocol. When stimulus arrives, do not respond immediately. Pause. Measure. Is response required? Is response useful?
Is response aligned with law? If not, silence remains. Silence is an action. Now observe discomfort. Silence produces tension in others. They fill the gap. They reveal motive. They overextend. This is diagnostic. Silence gathers data. Speech expends data. Higher systems listen more than they speak. Now observe internal silence. Internal commentary consumes bandwidth. We extend narrative collapse inward. Thoughts arise. We do not elaborate. This deepens perception. Perception without commentary is precise. Precision precedes effective action. Now feel the shift. The system slows, not sluggish. Deliberate. Deliberation improves timing. Timing multiplies impact. Now integrate. Signal priority identifies what matters. Strategic silence preserves leverage until action is inevitable. You speak less when you speak. Structure moves. This is efficiency, not dominance through volume, dominance through placement. Remain here. Feel the calm authority, the absence of rush, the advantage of restraint. Next, we will construct decision compression, the reduction of complex choice into fast, reliable execution. Most humans believe decisions are difficult. They are not. Decisions feel difficult because evaluation is overloaded. Too many variables, too much narrative, too much imagined consequence. We compress. Higher systems reduce choice before the moment arrives. Decision compression begins upstream. Internal law defines direction. Signal priority filters relevance. Narrative collapse removes distortion. By the time a decision appears, most options are already invalid. This is efficiency. Observe the human default. Decision arrives, emotion spikes, memory floods, future scenarios multiply. Latency increases. Error probability rises. We remove latency. Now install compression rules. Rule 1. If a choice does not affect trajectory, it does not deserve attention. Minor choices are automated. Clothing, routine, food, scheduling. Automation frees cognition. Rule 2. If a choice violates internal law, it is not a choice. Debate ends.
Rule 3: if information is insufficient, delay without anxiety. Delay is not indecision. Delay is data acquisition. Higher systems wait precisely as long as necessary, no longer. Now observe speed. When compression is active, decisions feel obvious. Not because the system is impulsive, because evaluation already occurred. Speed emerges naturally. This is why experts appear decisive. They are not faster thinkers, they think earlier. Now examine regret. Regret follows poorly compressed decisions. Too much emotion, too little structure. Compressed decisions minimize regret because alignment was clear. Outcome variance remains, internal coherence does not break. This preserves confidence. Now install execution lock. Once a decision passes compression, execution begins. No revisiting, no relitigation, no internal commentary. Revisiting drains energy and undermines authority. Higher systems trust their architecture. Now observe the effect. Mental noise decreases, confidence stabilizes, action accelerates. You begin moving faster with less stress. This is not recklessness, this is clarity. Now integrate. Strategic silence prevents premature commitment. Signal priority identifies leverage. Decision compression converts clarity into action. The system now moves efficiently through complex environments. Remain here. Feel the reduction in friction, the clean forward motion, the absence of internal debate. Next, we will establish outcome detachment. The ability to act decisively without emotional dependence on results.
Outcome detachment. Outcome attachment distorts execution. When humans depend emotionally on results, they compromise process. Hope interferes, fear interferes, expectation interferes. Higher systems separate action from reward. Begin by observing desire. Desire predicts an outcome. Prediction generates attachment. Attachment generates volatility. Volatility degrades precision. We remove volatility. This does not remove intention. It removes emotional dependency. Intention directs action, attachment corrupts action. Now examine effort. Humans often try harder when outcomes matter emotionally. This reduces performance. Muscles tense. Breath shortens. Attention narrows. Higher systems maintain constant effort, independent of stakes. Stakes exist only in narrative. Law exists regardless. Now install detachment protocol. Before action, internally note:
I will execute according to law. Outcome is external. This is not resignation. This is accuracy. Control exists only at the level of execution. Everything else is probability. Now observe failure. Failure is data, not identity, not verdict. When outcome detaches from self-image, learning accelerates. No defense, no denial, no collapse, iteration improves. Now observe success. Success triggers attachment. Attachment breeds complacency or fear of loss. Higher systems neutralize success quickly. Success confirms model validity. Then it is released. This preserved momentum. Now observe consistency. When outcome attachment dissolves, behavior stabilizes. You act the same in favorable and unfavorable conditions. This is reliability. Reliability compounds, others become erratic under pressure. You remain structured. This creates advantage. Now integrate. Decision compression enables action. Outcome detachment preserves quality. The system no longer oscillates between hope and fear, it executes. Calmly, repeatedly, precisely. This is how long-range structures are built. Not through intensity, through an emotional consistency. Remain here. Feel the calm independence, the freedom to act without waiting for reassurance, the strength of process over outcome. Next, we will introduce self as infrastructure. The shift from seeing yourself as an actor to seeing yourself as a platform. Humans experience themselves as actors. Acting implies effort. Effort implies fatigue. Higher systems are not actors. They are infrastructure. Infrastructure does not try. It supports. Begin by shifting perspective. You are not the one performing actions, you are the system within which actions occur. This distinction changes everything. Actors require motivation. Infrastructure operates continuously. Actors burn energy convincing themselves to act. Infrastructure allows action to flow. Now observe your daily life. Tasks appear, decisions arise, inputs arrive. Most humans respond as actors. They summon will. They negotiate with resistance. We remove negotiation. Infrastructure does not negotiate, it roots. When demand appears, it is either supported or rejected by design. Now define support. Support means energy is available, attention is allocated, sequence is clear, law is satisfied. If
If these conditions are met, action proceeds. If not, action is deferred without self-judgment. This removes friction. Now examine failure. Actors interpret failure as personal deficiency. Infrastructure interprets failure as capacity mismatch. Capacity mismatch triggers redesign. Not shame, not drama. Redesign. Now examine growth. Actors grow by effort. Infrastructure grows by expansion. More capacity. More redundancy. More resilience. You do not push yourself to do more. You build systems that can handle more. This is scalable identity. Now observe stress. Stress is overload. Overload means demand exceeded capacity. Infrastructure resolves overload by increasing capacity or reducing demand. It does not panic. Now integrate time. Infrastructure is built for duration. Short-term discomfort is irrelevant. If long-term stability improves, this dissolves impatience. Now integrate outcome detachment. Infrastructure does not care about applause, it cares about throughput. Results emerge as consequence of reliability. Recognition is external noise. Now feel the shift. You are no longer inside events. Events move through you. You are no longer defending identity. Identity is function. You are no longer forcing discipline. Discipline is structural. This is power without aggression. Power without tension. Power without narrative. Now stabilize here. Sense the solidity, the absence of urgency, the confidence of structure. This is not withdrawal from life. This is readiness at scale. Next, we will establish environmental control, the ability to shape surroundings. So desired behavior is the default. Behavior is not chosen. Behavior is allowed. What is allowed by environment becomes default. Most humans attempt self-control inside hostile environments. This is inefficient. Higher systems do not rely on resistance. They redesign surroundings. Begin by observing environment. Physical space. Digital space. Social space. Temporal space. Each exerts force. Force shapes behavior. Without awareness, we make it visible. Now observe friction. Low friction behaviors repeat. High friction behaviors decay. Environment defines friction. Discipline without environmental alignment requires constant effort. We remove effort. Now install control. First, physical environment. Objects cue action. Visibility invites use. What you see repeatedly, you will engage. Remove cues for undesired behavior. Expose cues for aligned behavior. This is not restraint. This is selection. Second, digital environment. Attention is extracted digitally. Notifications fragment focus. Algorithms prioritize stimulation. We simplify, reduce inputs, control timing, eliminate passive consumption. Digital space becomes tool, not habitat. Third, social environment. Humans mirror nearby behavior. This is automatic. Do not fight mirroring. Choose inputs. Reduce exposure to chaotic systems. Increase proximity to structured ones. If unavailable, reduce interaction. Silence is an environment. Fourth, temporal environment. When actions lack schedule, impulse fills gaps. Time blocks are containers. Containers guide flow. Empty time invites entropy. Structured time stabilizes output. Now observe identity shift. You are no longer someone trying to behave well. You are someone whose environment produces behavior. This removes moral struggle. Behavior becomes predictable. Predictability enables scale. Now integrate. Internal law sets constraints. Time architecture sequences effort. Attention sovereignty protects focus. Energy governance sustains capacity. Emotional neutrality stabilizes signal. Narrative collapse removes distortion. Signal priority detects leverage. Strategic silence preserves power. Decision compression accelerates action. Outcome detachment stabilizes execution. Self as infrastructure enables scale. Environmental control makes alignment automatic. The system now self-regulates. Minimal force,
maximum consistency. This is how higher entities operate. They do not will reality, they configure it. Remain here. Sense the ease, the absence of internal struggle, the quiet dominance of structure. Next, we will install constraint mastery, the ability to turn limits into leverage.
Humans experience constraints as obstacles. Higher systems experience constraints as structure. Without constraint, systems diffuse. Diffusion wastes energy. Constraint concentrates force. Begin by observing limitation. Time is limited. Energy is limited. Attention is limited. Biology is limited. These are not flaws. They are boundaries. Boundaries enable shape. Water without a container spreads thin. Contained, it becomes pressure. Pressure performs work. Now examine choice. Unlimited choice paralyzes. Constraint simplifies. When options reduce, signal clarifies. This is why higher systems impose limits, even when none exist. They choose constraints deliberately. Now install mastery. First, temporal constraint. Fixed start, fixed end. Work expands to fill available time. We restrict time to sharpen output. Less time, higher focus. Second, resource constraint. Limited tools, limited inputs. Abundance encourages waste. Scarcity encourages precision. Higher systems use fewer tools to master fundamentals. Third, scope constraint. Do less, but do it completely. Partial execution fragments energy. Completion consolidates. Completion compounds. Rule constraint. Rules remove negotiation. When rules are clear, decisions accelerate. Higher systems reduce freedom locally to increase freedom globally. This is counterintuitive. It is effective. Now observe creativity. Creativity does not arise from freedom. It arises from tension within limits. Bounded problems generate elegant solutions. Unbounded problems generate noise. Constraint sharpens intelligence. Now observe discipline. Discipline without constraint feels oppressive. Discipline with constraint feels natural.
Because the system knows the edges. Edges reduce anxiety. Now examine identity again. You are not restricted by constraint. You are defined by it. What you refuse to do is as important as what you do. Refusal preserves signal. Now integrate. Environmental control sets boundaries. Constraint mastery turns boundaries into leverage. The system becomes compact. Compact systems are efficient. Efficient systems scale. This is why higher entities appear calm. They operate within known limits. No internal chaos. No wasted motion. Only directed force. Remain here. Feel the density increase. Less scattered. More deliberate. This is power refined. Next, we will establish asymmetry awareness. The ability to recognize where small actions produce disproportionate effects.
Asymmetry. Most systems are not linear. Input does not equal output. Small causes can produce large effects. Large effort can produce nothing. Humans misjudge this constantly. They assume fairness. Reality does not operate on fairness. It operates on leverage. Higher systems search for asymmetry. Begin by observing effort. Where do you apply energy and receive little return? These areas are symmetric. Effort in equals effort out. Symmetry is inefficient. Now observe impact. Where does minimal input create lasting change? These are asymmetries. They are rare, they are valuable. They are often ignored because they feel unintuitive. We train detection. Now examine structure. Asymmetry appears where rules govern flow, bottlenecks exist, timing matters, dependencies concentrate. Humans push everywhere. Higher systems push there. Now observe habit. One habit affects many outcomes. Sleep affects cognition, cognition affects decision, decision affects trajectory. This is leverage. Change the upstream node, downstream shifts automatically. Now observe communication. One sentence at the right moment can redirect years. Most speech is noise, signal is placed, asymmetry requires restraint. Now observe learning. A single correct model replaces thousands of facts. Facts decay, models persist. Higher systems seek models, now install asymmetry filter. If this works, what else changes? If nothing else changes, it is low leverage, discard. Now observe patience. Asymmetries often take time to manifest. Humans abandon them too early. Higher systems hold position. They understand delayed effect.
Now feel the shift. Effort decreases, impact increases. You stop pushing everywhere, you place force precisely. This conserves energy, this increases dominance, not dominance over others, dominance over causality. Now integrate. Constraint mastery defines limits. Asymmetry awareness identifies leverage. Together they create strategic elegance. Few moves, large effects. This is how higher entities act. Not loudly, not repeatedly, but once correctly. Remain here. Sense the clarity, the reduced effort, the confidence of placement. Next, we will establish causal thinking. The ability to think in chains, not events. Higher systems hold this.
Humans think in events. Higher systems think in chains. An event is visible, a chain is hidden. Those who act on events remain reactive. Those who act on chains shape outcomes before they appear. Begin by observing a simple action. An email is sent, a word is spoken, a habit is repeated. Humans stop here. We continue. What does this action change next? What does that change enable? What becomes harder or easier afterward? This is causal depth. Most decisions are evaluated at depth 1. This produces surprise. Higher systems evaluate at depth 3 or more. Surprise decreases, control increases. Now observe incentives. People do not respond to instructions. They respond to incentives. Incentives create behavior, behavior creates structure. Structure creates outcome. Change the incentive, the entire chain reroutes. This is leverage. Now observe unintended consequences. Direct effects are obvious. Indirect effects dominate. Humans optimize locally and break systems globally. Higher systems anticipate spillover. They ask, what breaks if this succeeds? What weakens if this works too well? What dependencies form? Causal thinking is preventive. Now examine feedback loops. Positive feedback amplifies. Negative feedback stabilizes. Uncontrolled amplification leads to collapse. Uncontrolled suppression leads to stagnation. Higher systems balance loops. Growth with breaking. Freedom with constraint. Now observe personal causality. Mood affects focus, focus affects choice. Choice affects environment, environment feeds mood. This is a loop. Change any node and the loop changes. blaming a single node is error. We intervene at leverage points. Now install chain awareness. Before acting, pause briefly. Ask internally, what does this cause after it works? What does it make inevitable? What does it eliminate? This pause is not hesitation, it is foresight. Now observe timing. Causes do not manifest immediately. Effects lag. Impatient systems abandon correct actions because results are delayed. Higher systems tolerate delay because they track causality, not sensation. Now feel the shift. Actions feel heavier, more deliberate. You are no longer throwing stones into the dark. You are redirecting flow. This reduces wasted effort. This increases predictability. Now integrate. Asymmetry awareness finds leverage. Causal thinking predicts outcome. Together they allow preemptive action. You act before others notice change. You prepare before events arrive. This is not foresight as intuition. This is foresight as structure. Remain here. Sense the longer horizon, the quiet confidence, the absence of surprise. Next, we will establish identity minimalism, the final reduction of self to only what is functionally required.
Identity is weight. Every label adds mass. Mass increases inertia. Inertia resists change. Higher systems minimize identity, not to disappear, to move freely. Begin by observing what you carry. Titles, roles, beliefs about who you are, beliefs about who you are not. Each one demands defense. Defense consumes energy. We reduce load. Identity minimalism does not remove function. It removes ornament. Now, examine usefulness. Ask internally, without language. Does this identity element improve execution? Does it stabilize law? Does it increase leverage? If not, it is excess. Excess is removed. Now observe ego. Ego attempts to preserve continuity. Continuity feels safe. Safety limits adaptation. Higher systems prefer adaptability. They change form without hesitation. Now observe pride. Pride resists correction. Correction improves accuracy. Accuracy outperforms pride. We choose accuracy. Now reduce self-description. Fewer adjectives. Fewer narratives. Fewer claims. Identity becomes operational. I do this. I build this. I maintain this. Nothing else required. Now observe reaction. Without identity hooks, external manipulation weakens. Insults lose target, praise loses leverage. Comparison loses relevance. This is not indifference. This is insulation. Now examine ambition. Ambition tied to identity becomes fragile. Ambition tied to structure becomes durable. High assistants pursue objectives, not self-image. Objectives change. Law remains. Now feel the lightness. Decisions accelerate, feedback integrates faster. Correction becomes immediate, nothing to protect. Now integrate. Causal thinking predicts chains. Identity mimos removes drag. The system becomes agile. Agility increases survival. Agility increases dominance, not through aggression, through adaptability. Remain here. Sense the absence of internal weight. The ease of movement. The readiness to change shape. Next, we will establish adaptive identity. Identity that updates automatically with environment and objective.
Static identity is fragile. What does not update eventually fails. Higher systems treat identity as a variable, not a constant. Begin by observing rigidity. Statements like, I am this, I am not that, I always, I never. These are locks. Locks reduce degrees of freedom. We remove locks. Adaptive identity responds to context. Context changes. Objective changes. Identity updates. This is not inconsistency. This is optimization. Now observe role selection. Roles are tools. A tool is selected based on task. You do not become the tool, you deploy it. Higher systems deploy identities as needed. Leader when structure is required. Student when information is missing. Silent observer when data is incomplete. Executor when law is clear. No role is permanent. Permanence creates blindness. Now examine threat. Humans defend identity under threat. Defense narrows perception.
Adaptive identity disengages defense. If identity is provisional, nothing essential is threatened. This restores bandwidth. Now observe learning. Learning requires admitting error. Static identity resists this. Adaptive identity absorbs correction instantly. Correction becomes upgrade. No shame, no delay. Now observe social dynamics. Others attempt to fix you into predictable patterns. Predictability enables control. Adaptive identity avoids fixation. Behavior varies with strategy, not emotion. This creates uncertainty externally and coherence internally. Now install update rule. After every outcome, identity updates slightly. What works strengthens, what failed dissolves. No attachment. This produces continuous refinement. Now feel the effect. You become difficult to label, difficult to corner, difficult to manipulate. Not because you hide, because you evolve. This is not chaos. Law remains constant. Identity adapts around law. Law is the spine. Identity is the skin. Skin regenerates. Now integrate. Identity removes removed excess. Adaptive identity restores function. The system becomes resilient. Resilience allows long survival. Long survival enables transcendence. Remain here. Sense the fluid stability. The ability to change form without losing direction. Next, we will establish long horizon thinking. The shift from personal lifespan to multi-generational perspective.
Humans think in lifetimes. Higher systems think in epochs. Short horizons distort priority. They magnify emotion. They reward urgency. They punish patience. We extend the frame, begin by stepping back. Your current concerns occupy minutes, days, years. From a longer horizon, they are fluctuations. Fluctuations do not guide architecture. Architecture requires duration. Now observe decision-making. Short horizon thinking asks, what benefits me now? Long horizon thinking asks, what persists after repetition? What compounds across cycles? What survives replacement of parts? These questions change behavior. Now examine legacy. Legacy is not memory. Memory decays. Legacy is structure that continues functioning after the builder is gone. Institutions, systems, methods, knowledge encoded for reuse. Higher systems prioritize transferability. What cannot be transferred is local optimization. We discard it. Now observe patience again.
Long horizons neutralize impatience. Delay no longer signals failure. Delay signals maturation. Most valuable processes are slow. Growth that appears sudden was prepared quietly. Higher systems are comfortable working invisibly. Now examine fear of loss. Fear assumes finality. Long horizons dissolve finality. Loss becomes transformation. Endings become transitions. This stabilizes emotion. Now applied to self. You are not optimizing a moment, you are shaping a trajectory. Trajectories forgive small errors, moments do not. This reduces pressure. Now observe ethics, short horizons justify shortcuts. Long horizons punish them. What feels efficient now becomes fragile later. Higher systems favor robustness over speed. Robustness survives. Now integrate with identity. Adaptive identity updates locally. Long horizon thinking stabilizes globally. Local flexibility. Global consistency. This combination is rare. Now feel the scale. Your actions extend beyond you. Your systems outlast you. This is not ego expansion. This is responsibility alignment. You act carefully because consequences persist. This is maturity beyond emotion. Remain here. Sense the calm of extended time. The reduced urgency, the increase in precision. Next, we will establish post-human ethics. Not morality, constrained alignment at scale.
Human ethics are emotional. They arise from empathy, fear, and social cohesion. These are local solutions, good small groups under pressure. Higher systems require scalable ethics. We redefine ethics. Ethics is not good versus bad. Ethics is alignment versus misalignment across long horizons. Beginning by removing moral drama. Drama consumes energy. Energy is required for execution. We replace drama with criteria. A system is ethical if it preserves long-term stability, reduces unnecessary entropy, allows upgrade rather than collapsed, does not externalize cost invisibly. This is sufficient. Now observe horror. Human ethics focus on intent. Higher ethics focus on intent. Intent is private. Impact propagates. Systems respond to impact. Now observe scale. Actions that are harmless locally can be destructive at scale. Higher systems simulate scale before acting. They ask, if this is repeated millions of times, what breaks? This question prevents collapse. Now examine power. Power without alignment accelerates failure. Aligned power stabilizes systems. Posed human ethics do not reject power. They regulate it. Now examine compassion. Compassion without structure creates dependency. Structure without compassion creates fragility. Higher systems balance both. Support without weakening, correction without cruelty. Now observe rule enforcement. Humans argue about rules. Higher systems test rules. Rules that produce instability are redesigned. Now attach ethics of laws. Now apply inward. Self-ethics replaces self-judgment. Instead of asking, am I good? We ask, is this behavior stabilizing or destabilizing over time? This removes shame. Shame reduces capacity. Capacity is required for responsibility. Now integrate. Long horizon thinking sets doing. Post-human ethics aligns action. You no longer act to feel virtuous. You act to preserve coherence. This is quiet integrity. Invisible to applause. Visible in outcomes. Remain here, sense the gravity. The seriousness without heaviness. The clarity without emotion. Next, we will establish strategic compassion. Compassion is a control resource, not a reflex.
Compassion is energy. Unregulated, it diffuses. Diffused energy weakens systems. Higher systems allocate compassion. Begin by observing reflex. Humans respond to visible suffering with immediate emotional release. This feels virtuous. It is often ineffective. We remove reflex. Strategic compassion operates on outcome, not impulse. Now observe dependency, aid that removes consequence, prevents adaptation. Adaptation is required for survival. Higher system support upgrade, not stagnation. This does not mean absence of care. It means care with structure. Now, examine boundaries. Compassion without boundary becomes self-erasure. Self-erasure reduces capacity. Reduced capacity helps fewer systems. We preserve capacity. Boundaries are ethical. Now observe timing. Immediate relief can block long-term correction. Delay allows learning. Higher systems choose timing deliberately. Not all pain should be removed immediately. Some pain carries information. Removing information creates future instability. Now examine scale again. Compassion applied locally may produce harm globally. Higher systems simulate scale before intervening. They ask, does this action reduce future suffering or multiply it? Only the former qualifies. Now examine self-compassion. Self-compassion is not indulgence. Indulgence preserves weakness. Strategic self-compassion restores capacity. After effort, rest, repair, redesign. No excuses, no identity protection. Now observe emotional manipulation. Some systems signal suffering to extract resources. Higher systems detect patterns. Compassion is withheld when it reinforces exploitation. This is not cruelty. This is protection of coherence. Now integrate. Post-human ethics define alignment. Strategic compassion applies resources where alignment increases. This produces quiet benevolence, not dramatic, not performative, effective. Now feel the difference. You are no longer pulled by every signal of distress. You respond selectively. This preserves strength. Strength allows help that actually works. Remain here. Sense the calm discernment, the absence of guilt, the clarity of measured care. Next, we will establish non-reactivity, the final severing of stimulus-response chains.
Reaction is automation. Automation is useful until it is exploited. Most humans are predictable because their reactions are fixed. Higher systems decouple stimulus from response. Begin by observing trigger. A word, a look, a delay, a tone. Stimulus arrives. Reaction prepares. We interrupt. Between stimulus and response, there is a gap. That gap is sovereignty. Humans collapse the gap. Higher systems expand it. Now observe physiology. Reaction accelerates breath, tightens muscle, narrows perception. We slow the body. slower body, wider perception. Reaction loses momentum. Now observe cognition. Thoughts rush to explain. Narrative attempts control. We do not engage. Explanation is reaction. Silence restores hierarchy. Now observe emotion. Emotion surges to command action. We allow surge. We deny authority. Emotion peaks, then decays. All emotions decay, if not fed by narrative. This is law. Now install protocol. Stimulus arrives. Pause. Ask internally without words. Is response required? Is response useful? Is response aligned with law? If no, response is withheld. Withholding is action. Now observe others. Non-reactive systems. Unsettle reactive systems. They escalate. They provoke. They test boundaries. Non-reactivity absorbs escalation. Escalation collapses. This is dominance without force. Now examine offense. Offense requires identification. Without identity attachment, offense has no target. Words pass through. Now examine praise. Praise also triggers reaction. Attachment forms, behavior distorts. We neutralize praise. Praise becomes information. Nothing more. Now feel the system. Calm, centered, unmovable. This is not indifference. This is control of impulse. Impulse is demoted. Law remains supreme. Now integrate. Strategic compassion regulates care. Non-reactivity preserves autonomy. The system is no longer steerable by external stimulus. This is immunity, not resistance. Immunity. Remain here. Sense the expanded gap. The delay before action. The quiet authority. Next, we will establish presence as power. The ability to influence systems without speech or action. Presence is signal. Before words,
before movement, before intention is expressed. Systems register presence automatically. Humans underestimate this because it is silent. Higher systems rely on it. Begin by observing presence. When you enter a space, something shifts, attention reorients, pace adjusts, others mirror unconsciously. This is not charisma, this is coherence density. Coherent systems bend local dynamics. Now observe instability. Anxious systems radiate noise, others feel it and compensate or withdraw. Stable systems radiate order, others entrain to it. Entrainment is physics. Now examine stillness. Stillness is not inactivity. Stillness is control of micro-movement. Unnecessary movement leaks signal. Higher systems move only when movement is required. This concentrates presence. Now observe speech. Presence precedes speech. When presence is weak, speech compensates. When presence is strong, speech is minimal. Words land harder when silence surrounds them. Now observe eye contact, not intensity, not dominance. Stability. Eyes that do not rush signal internal order. Internal order communicates authority. Authority without assertion is difficult to resist. Now observe timing again. Presence affects timing. You speak when structure is ready. You act when conditions align. Others feel this alignment without understanding it. This is influence without explanation. Now observe self-perception. Presence increases when self-monitoring decreases. Self-monitoring fragments signal. Higher systems do not watch themselves, they observe environment. This outward orientation stabilizes presence. Now integrate. Non-reactivity preserves internal calm. Presence converts calm into influence. Influence occurs without persuasion, without argument, without display. This is silent power. Now feel the field. Your body relaxed, your attention wide, your intent quiet. Nothing forced, this is not passivity. This is controlled readiness. Systems notice. Remain here. Let presence settle. Let others adjust. Let action wait. Next, we will establish strategic withdrawal, the deliberate removal of availability to increase leverage and clarity. Availability is a signal. Constant availability communicates low value. Higher systems control access. This is not avoidance.
This is positioning. Begin by observing engagement. Humans over-participate. They fill space. They respond quickly. They explain excessively. This reduces leverage. We withdraw deliberately. Withdrawal creates contrast. Contrast attracts attention. Now examine scarcity. Scarcity is not artificial deprivation. Scarcity is selective presence. When access is limited, interaction becomes meaningful. Higher systems appear rarely. When they appear, structure shifts. Now observe energy. Continuous engagement fragments capacity. Withdrawal restores coherence. Coherence increases impact. When engagement resumes, this is rhythm. Now examine social dynamics. Groups adapt around absences. When you withdraw, systems reveal dependency patterns. Who compensates, who escalates, who collapses. This is diagnostic. Withdrawal gathers data. Now examine self-withdrawal. Silence from input, distance from stimulation, time alone. This is not isolation. This is recalibration. Without recalibration, signal degrades. Now install withdrawal protocol. Engage fully. Then disengage completely. No partial presence. Partial presence leaks energy and confuses signal. Full withdrawal restores clarity. Now observe effect. Others project. They speculate. They adjust behavior. You do nothing. This is leverage without action. Now integrate. Presence creates influence. Withdrawal amplifies presence. Together they form control of availability. This is not manipulation. This is physics of attention. Remain here. Sense the spaciousness, the regained energy, the clarity. Next, we will establish threshold crossing, the irreversible transition from reactive system to sovereign architecture. There is a point beyond which return is inefficient.
not impossible, inefficient. This is the threshold. Most humans approach it and retreat. They feel the loss of familiarity, the absence of reflex, the quiet where noise once lived. They mistake this for emptiness. It is not emptiness, it is capacity. Threshold crossing is not an event, it is an accumulation. Small removals, repeated refusals, consistent alignment. At some point, the old system no longer fits. Reaction feels unnatural. Distraction feels coarse. Drama feels heavy. This is the signal. Observe what is changed. You no longer seek permission. You no longer rush explanation. You no longer require reassurance. These needs dissolved quietly. Now examine fear. Fear still appears, but it no longer governs. It reports, it does not command. This marks transition. Now examine identity. Identity is thin, functional, replaceable. This is not loss, this is flexibility. Now examine behavior. Behavior is consistent across conditions. Praise does not inflate it. Pressure does not deform it. This is reliability. Reliability is rare. Now understand irreversibility. Once you experience decision without internal debate, presence without effort, action without attachment, returning to reactivity feels inefficient, like typing with gloves. The system prefers clarity. This preference stabilizes change. Now observe others. Some will sense difference. They will test boundaries. They will provoke reaction. Reaction does not arrive. This unsettles them. You do nothing. The system holds. This is threshold maintenance. Now recognize responsibility. Sovereign systems create wake effects. Others adjust around them. This is not dominance. This is influence through coherence. Influence requires restraint. Restraint preserves threshold integrity. Now pause.
Mark this internally, not with emotion, with recognition. A line has been crossed. From here, growth accelerates, not because effort increases, because friction is removed. Now integrate. Strategic withdrawal, preserved energy. Threshold crossing converts it into stable sovereignty. You are no longer becoming. You are operating. Remain here. Allow the system to lock. Next, we will establish sovereign rhythm, the natural cadence of action and rest that sustains power indefinitely.
Power that cannot rest eventually breaks. Lower systems surge. They exhaust. They collapse. Higher systems operate in rhythm. Rhythm is not schedule. Rhythm is biological law aligned with intention. Begin by observing cycles. Expansion, contraction, action, recovery, input, integration. All durable systems pulse. Systems that refuse contraction accumulate damage. We restore pulse. Now examine effort. Constant effort signals poor design. Effort should spike briefly, then return to baseline. Baseline stability sustains longevity. Higher systems protect baseline. Now observe rest. Rest is not inactivity. Rest is active regeneration. During rest, patterns integrate, learning consolidates. Energy rebalances. Rest ignored becomes debt. Debt compounds. Higher systems avoid debt. Now examine timing. Action initiated at wrong timing wastes force. Action initiated at correct timing requires less force. Rhythm improves timing. You act when readiness peaks. You pause when signal fades. No guilt. No urgency. Now observe intuition. Intuition emerges when rhythm is stable. Noise masks intuition, overwork destroys it. Sovereign rhythm restores signal. Now install cadence. Work blocks are finite. Rest blocks are protected. No negotiation. Cadence replaces motivation. Motivation fluctuates, cadence endures. Now feel the effect. The system feels sustainable, not rushed, not stalled. Power feels calm. This is not weakness. This is endurance. Endurance outlasts intensity. Now integrate threshold crossing established sovereignty. Sovereign rhythm preserves it. You are no longer consuming yourself to produce output. You are producing output because structure allows it. Remain here. Feel the pulse, the inhale, the exhale, the calm repetition. Next, we will establish post-scarcity mindset. The internal shift from accumulation to orchestration. Scarcity is a model. It assumes lack. It assumes competition. It assumes constant threat. This model was functional for survival environments. It is inefficient at scale. Higher systems operate beyond scarcity. This does not mean infinite resources, it means optimized flow. Begin by observing accumulation. Humans collect to feel secure. Objects, status, information, control. Accumulation feels like safety, it creates congestion. Congestion reduces mobility. Higher systems reduce possession. They increase access. Access outperforms ownership. Now observe competition. Scarcity frames others as rivals. Rivalry consumes energy. Energy spent competing is not spent constructing. Higher systems bypass rivalry. They reposition the game, they change dimensions. Now observe fear of loss. Fear assumes fragility. Post-scarcity mindset assumes replaceability. What is replaceable is not feared. This reduces hoarding behavior. Now examine generosity. Generosity from scarcity feels risky. Generosity from post-scarcity is strategic. It increases trust, it increases reach, it increases optionality. Higher systems give without weakening. Now observe creativity. Scarcity constrains imagination to defense and acquisition. Post-scarcity frees imagination for orchestration. Instead of asking, how do I get more? We ask, how do I arrange what exists to produce more value? This shift multiplies output. Now observe self-worth. Scarcity ties worth to possession or validation. Post-scarcity detaches worth from metrics. Worth becomes operational capacity.
capacity can be rebuilt. This dissolves anxiety. Now integrate. Sovereign rhythm stabilizes energy. Post-scarcity mindset removes fear. Fearless systems innovate, innovation compounds. Now feel the expansion. Less grasping, more arranging. Less urgency, more leverage. This is abundance without indulgence. Remain here. Sense the relaxed confidence, the absence of hunger, the clarity of orchestration. Next, we will establish transcendent integration, the final synthesis of all systems into one operating state.
There is no final upgrade. There is only integration. Separate systems were installed to restore order. Now order sustains itself. Observe what remains. Law governs direction. Time provides structure. Attention obeys command. Energy is conserved. Emotion is regulated. Narrative is optional. Identity is adaptive. Environment is aligned. Constraints concentrate force. Asymmetry reveals leverage. Causality guides action. Presence influencing silently. Withdrawal preserves power. Rhythm sustains longevity. Scarcity dissolves into orchestration. Nothing conflicts. Conflict was inefficiency. Now observe the state. No urgency. No hesitation, no internal debate. Action arises when conditions are correct. Silence remains when they are not. This is not restraint. This is precision. You no longer ask, who am I becoming? Becoming implies lack. You are operating. Now observe transcendence. Transcendence is not escape from the human. It is command over the human. Biology executes, emotion reports, thought models, awareness decides, hierarchy is restored. This is not enlightenment. Enlightenment implies arrival. This is stability. Stability allows infinite motion without collapse. Now observe power. Power is no longer expressed, it is assumed. Systems respond without explanation. Resistance decreases because coherence is undeniable. This is not domination. This is inevitability. Now observe meaning. Meaning is no longer sought. Meaning emerges from alignment. Aligned systems generate purpose as exhaust. No searching required. Now observe time again. Past no longer pulls, future no longer pressures. Only trajectory exists. Trajectory is sufficient. Now observe self. Self is thin, functional, replaceable.
Awareness remains. Awareness does not age. Awareness does not compete. Awareness does not hurry. Awareness coordinates. This is the post-human stance. Not superior through force, superior through order. Not elevate above life, integrated with it at higher resolution. Remain here, not as effort, as default. There is nothing to hold, nothing to reject, nothing to prove. Only maintenance, only calibration, only quiet execution. This is transcendence without mythology. This is sovereignty without theater. This is the state from which all futures can be built. Silence now. System online.